Is your definition of success creating momentum or stress?
Coach Galley, I
Coach
love it.
Crandall.
Love it when you bring the heat to start an episode.
Is that a tough question?
That's a great question.
It's great, but is it tough? Is that
I
a
do
hard
think
question?
Well, it forces us to confront an uncomfortable potential reality. The way we define success creates momentum if it's done well, and it creates stress if we don't do it well. And more often than not, we haven't done it well. And so it's a tough question because you got to look in the mirror and you got to be like, okay, how am I defining success? And is it benefiting me? Or worse, is it causing stress for my kid?
Yeah. And guess what, parents? If you're not doing this exactly right, hey, join the club.
Welcome to the club.
Welcome
we have
to
membership
the club.
t-shirts.
Yeah. You know, in episode 93, we were throwing around questions. We were really focusing on the QOC tool. I think you and I should focus on some questions right now for the parents.
Well, we talked about playing question catch.
Let's play catch.
So, and parents, you may want to pause and think about each of these questions. You go to the transcript, look at these, because these are the questions that are going to really drive you to create some good thinking about this.
I've got a better idea. Well, no, not so much a better idea. I just wanted to add something, unless they're driving.
Yeah.
And that is when you pause and think about the question, look in the mirror.
You could look in the rearview mirror.
They could. Don't stare in the rearview mirror.
Is that advisable, Mr. Driver's Ed teacher former?
Not while they're driving. No.
Okay.
But I know this. In fact, I have a couple of exercises that I use with clients that we won't go into here that involve the mirror, and it is extremely powerful. So,
all right.
And
if you're in a place where you can do it, grab the mirror.
Yeah, it can cause a little bit of discomfort, but actually that's where we're going to grow, right, Coach?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yes, in the discomfort zone.
The growth zone.
Okay, you got a question?
I do. When you say, meaning you as a parent, when you say, I just want my kid to succeed, what do you really mean?
Big fat pause right there.
Yeah. It's worth pausing on, because most of us as parents, our default response, I just want my kid to succeed. But what does that really mean to you? And that's worth spending some time with. Because your definition of success is going to have a profound impact on them. And it's worth spending some time on that. You got one?
I do. I mean, I kind of forgot about it because I was doing some deep reflection right there.
We're not reflecting right now.
That was a powerful question. So here's another one. Can your teen describe what success looks like for them without using your...
Ooh. That one hits you, boom, right between the eyes.
We should have warned the parents to put on their helmets and protective gear.
This is a disclaimer episode.
If you have
question catch.
Yeah, if you have some,
that's a really cool one though, because many times that's where it gets real, is when you hear your kids parrot back their description of success, and if it sounds just like yours, that may or may not be a good thing.
It could still be a good thing.
It could be. It could definitely be a good thing. I got my next question.
Go for it.
Are you coaching your child to win your game or theirs?
Definitely worth some pondering.
Yes, sir.
Here's another one. What scoreboard are you looking at? And who created it?
Ooh. That one goes right at the heart of some of the foundational principles of the scoreboard course that we have. Who built that scoreboard? Just getting ourselves to acknowledge where does our definition of success really come from? My next one, do you and your teen have a silent contract around success that's never been discussed?
A silent contract.
Yeah, I know. I knew you'd like this one.
Where did you come up with that?
Well,
hey, say that again. I want to say that again. I want to hear that in Coach Crandall voice.
Do you and your teen have a silent contract around success that's never been discussed?
Wow. What are your thoughts on that?
I think the silent we may need to do a whole episode on the idea of silent contracts.
I'm going to make a note of that right now.
Please do, because I think this is where there are so many things, not just in relationships with our kids, but I mean spouses, friends, coworkers. There's a lot of these silent contracts that we create, and we don't ever talk about them. And they're not a bad thing, but it can really go to a beneficial place when we talk about the quiet part out loud and make sure that we're all clear on it. And that's where I think this goes with, working with your kids and talking about what is that definition of success, rather than have it being just something that's silent, but knowing what they think, what your kid thinks success really looks like. Not just assuming, because it's in the lack of communication, it's in the silence that negativity fills the void.
Man, you just hit a triple off the left center field wall with that one.
Thanks.
I really like that. It fits right into our shared philosophy that all progress starts with the truth.
Yep.
And and you also brought in a nice little buzz phrase there, which is, I'm just a huge fan of saying the silent part out loud.
I knew you'd love that.
Yes, I love that. Okay, here's another good one. Would your teen say they feel successful at who they are rather than just what they do?
I love that question. That's a topic so worth spending time talking to your kids about. Who they are being more important than what they do. Helping them create separation between their results and them. Because it's where it gets really dangerous psychologically, where the fragility kind of comes in, is if their results are attached to their identity. If their performance is attached to their identity, what they do attaches to who they are. If they ever have a bad performance, if something ever happens, like if a kid gets hurt and they can't play anymore, heaven forbid, what does that impact on their identity? And if there's not a buffer between who they are and what they do, that could be a problem.
Yeah. Johnny the football player versus Johnny the person.
Yep. And which one's more important to you as a parent?
Well, on Friday night, it seems like it's Johnny the football player. Okay, finish us off with another question, another reflective question for the parents.
Are you measuring effort, growth, and integrity, or just the results?
Well, that just ties back into what you were saying about the who you are versus what you do.
Yeah.
When it's what they do, we tend to focus on results, don't you think?
Yeah, we do focus on results a lot. You get post game and it's like, wow, that was a great play. I loved it when you did this and this and this. And that says a lot to them about what we value. And I think that those post game conversations and talks that we have with our kids, so important to make sure that we're helping them to create a wholesome, holistic picture of who they are, not just what they do. I love watching you play. That's more focused on that. Is it bad to celebrate the results? Nope. But it's balancing those two things out and making sure that you highlight those things about who they are.
Love the way you use the word balance there.
Yeah, balance is everything here.
And not always easy to do, because especially in the world of sports, where we get so emotionally attached to outcomes, scores, and scoreboards. So speaking of scoreboards, let's talk about a few different scenarios and stories that illustrate this idea of how we're measuring success.
Yep.
Because you did mention the scoreboard course earlier. I think we'll talk more about it a little bit later.
I think it's one of the most valuable tools that we've got. It's really,
For sure.
really helpful.
I would call it foundational.
Who do you want to look at first?
Well, I'll tell you what, I like Ellie. And this why, because this one story kind of flies in the face the traditional approach to defining success, because we often are talking parents who are so results oriented. And in this situation, the tables are turned. So you have Ellie, who her parents were defining success as her finding joy and confidence in her dancing because she had just overcome a serious injury and had just made a comeback. And so her parents, that's how they were viewing success. But for Ellie, she wants to be on a national competition team. And so just getting back and being healthy, that was not success to her. And so using the scoreboard course, using the scorecard that we have is a very helpful tool. This is going to help them to become more, even if they aren't totally aligned with each other, they're going to definitely understand each other. I mean, we could bring Stephen Covey in here if you want to start talking about understanding.
Yeah.
But if Ellie and her parents are going to be completely separated and very, very divided and far apart, that could lead to some real struggles, not just in communication, but it's not going to help her to perform her best.
Right. Because if you get conflict there, it never helps anybody out, regardless of who wants sometimes it's the parents that want them to go really far. In this case, it was Ellie that wanted to go really far. But getting them on the same page with that definition of success really helps the parents to support the kid and what the kid feels is important.
Give us another one.
Well, basketball is a great place to go. So you got Jalen. This one's more of your typical story where Jalen's dad had played when he was younger. Really good player in his own right. And he'd average like 20 points a game. Well, the dad is pushing Jalen to try to be that same guy, to average 20 points a game, just like he did. But Jalen is more interested. Great kid too, great teammate. That's what he wants, is to be the best teammate. And he wants to get recruited almost more for his leadership and the approach that he brings to the team rather than just his stats. And so they get working together, defining success after watching film, but not the film of the game. The dad revelation was kind of when he was watching Jalen help a struggling teammate. That's what's important to him. That's how he's measuring success. And so they were able to get on the same page with that and have just move forward unitedly. And Jalen felt super supported as he was going out and pursuing his definition of success.
This reminds me, Nate, of a previous episode when we were talking about Cooper Flagg, and I love watching him play, actual basketball because he's so skilled. But it's fun to watch him when he's not playing, like in between plays and on the bench. And I'm going to share with you something. One of my good friends posted this on social media about very famous. I mean, who would you say is the best player in baseball, Major League Baseball right now?
Guys for the Dodgers, Ohtani or something like that.
Yeah. Ohtani. So there was a camera on him, which there's always going to be a camera on him probably. But he was at the water cooler in the dugout and he was filling up cups for his teammates. Like instead of just getting his and then he's done, he's on to his next thing. He filled up 7 or 8 cups and put them on top of the cooler because they had all been consumed. And I just thought, that's leadership right there. That's really cool. Yeah. So like that's what Jalen was going for.
Leaders eat last kind of approach.
What's the danger too? I mean, you actually mentioned the 20 points thing. What's the danger in a parent actually throwing out a number like that, even though you and I, we love to measure and track things because that's how you improve. But what's the danger of telling your son or daughter you need to average this many points a game?
So this is where, like, the scoreboard course, if you get the scoreboard course, we get way into all this stuff, which makes it super valuable. But the numbers are largely uncontrollable. And so when you start throwing out a number, go get 20 points. Well, what if he gets in foul trouble? What if the coach chooses not to play him that game? What if the team's approach for that game, the team's game plan is Jalen's more of a facilitator in this game? The other team's got a dynamic defensive player that they put on Jalen. And so Jalen has to facilitate more. So many uncontrollables go into this. And so when you start chasing a number, sometimes it negatively impacts not only the team, but the individual.
Yeah, a lot of damage can be done there.
It's a risky game throwing out the numbers because they really are. They're uncontrollable. And at best, it's a partially controllable thing.
Yeah. Okay, this last story, I think this one happens quite often. And that is where you have a parent and a teen that are they're looking at completely different scoreboards. So you have Sophie, who plays in a youth orchestra. She is good at what she does, but her mom's definition of success is being in the first chair.
Yeah.
Hey, she's got to be in the first chair. And right now that isn't happening. And so eventually this leads to a meltdown with Sophie. Because she's not living up to the expectation that her mother had. And the good news is that this meltdown leads to a really frank discussion and an honest conversation. Once again, all progress starts with the truth. And they find out that they're looking at completely different scoreboards. So if you have parents, Nate, that are looking at completely different scoreboards, and I'm going to plug the scoreboard course again because we account for that. Why is this such a good opportunity when there is, I mean, we really don't want the meltdown, but if it happens, what's the opportunity there for parents and teens?
In dealing with the meltdown or getting the scoreboard course?
Well, I mean, you hear meltdown, you think this is awful. But if the parent understands the principles that we share in the scoreboard course, how can this completely shift? And it actually is, I think it can happen smoother and quicker and easier than most parents would imagine.
Everything's an opportunity to learn and grow. When we see things like that, it's the growth mindset approach. We want to see things as, here's a chance for us to grow and improve. So the meltdown's not great, but if we know how to handle it well, we can use that breakdown as an opportunity to build up. Rock bottom is often the solid foundation that you get to build your future on. And so when you have a meltdown, you can look at that as rock bottom and say, okay, great, we found the bedrock. Now let's build. And that's where the scoreboard course becomes super useful, because what it does is it provides a framework that we've worked on, researched, and we basically act as your teammates to help guide you through the process of building a scoreboard that will allow you and your team performer and athlete to get on the same page and move forward with purpose.
Very well said. I have another question, because I think this shows up in all of these stories that we've told about these parents and these three teen athletes and performers. And that is, at some point, there's got to be some type of balance. I'm using the word you used earlier. There's got to be some balance between achievement and fulfillment. And you and I talk about this a lot. We go back to when we first started playing, whether it was the piano or whether it was baseball. In most cases, young kids start playing because it's fun.
Yep.
They pick up a musical instrument because it's fun to experiment with it. And whether it sounds good at the beginning or not, it doesn't matter. They want to have fun. And that's where they're getting some really good fulfillment out of it. And then as they get older and as competition comes into play, we start focusing so much on achievement and results because we are looking at scoreboards. And the scoreboard course helps you to create your own scoreboard.
Helps you hop in the driver's seat and create one rather than having it forced upon you. We asked one of those questions earlier, asked who built it? Who built that scoreboard? And if you didn't build your own scoreboard, it's a slippery slope. Because then somebody else is dictating how you choose to measure success. And that's a lot of power to have. But when we take ownership of it, it can really help confidence. It can help enjoyment. It can help engagement. So many things get better when we take control of our scoreboard.
And baked into all of this is, I know you're such a huge fan of self-determination theory. We also talk with our clients a lot about having a growth mindset fits in there. And I think this is probably true, Coach. When we create our own scoreboard, we often will include many of the intrinsic motivators rather than focusing. So much of the scoreboards out there in the public are so focused on extrinsic motivation and the external. And the scoreboard course helps you get back to the longer lasting and more fulfilling motivators, which are the intrinsic ones where you really take ownership of your performance and the scoreboard that you're measuring it by.
Yeah, that's well said.
Got any other questions or anything to get the parents thinking about this whole idea of creating your own scoreboard and your own definition of success?
One thing that I love just talking about with the idea of the scoreboard, if your scoreboard's only based on outcomes, kind of like what you were talking about with extrinsic motivation, it becomes a hungry ghost. But that scoreboard, when it's based only on outcomes, it's never enough. You always need more and more and more wins, more points, more runs, and it can lead you down some bad paths.
Did you say hungry? The hungry ghost.
Hungry ghost. It
sounds like a pub in the outskirts of London.
It does a little bit, but it's this idea that ghost doesn't have a body, and so it eats, but when it eats, it doesn't get full. And so it just eats and eats and eats and eats and eats and eats. And that's kind of what this is like, this chasing results is it's just like you can't get enough. It's never enough. I have golfers that I've coached and I used to tease them and say, when's it going to be good enough for you? Well, when I shoot the score, I said, really? Because if you come in and you shoot that score, I promise you're going to say, well, I could have done better if I would have done this, this, and this. And so even then, good enough's not good enough. But that happens when we base our scoreboard only on the outcomes. You got any other insights?
Well, that was center target. No, I think that's a good one to end on. I do have a question for you, though. So, Coach Crandall, why should parents make a very modest investment into themselves and their teens by picking up the scoreboard course?
So most people are going to listen to this and be like, yes, that's a great idea. I want to do it. We show you how. We become your coaches and help you go through the process. So it's following that framework, and that framework simplifies the process. That framework makes it quicker and easier for parents to get together with their kids and have the conversations that allow them to come up with that scoreboard that they've designed. And so that's well worth the investment to be able to come in and have the coaching from us as we walk them through the process of creating that. Simplifies things, really helps to make it a reality.
Love it. You can pick it up at createtransformbecome.com. You can get that link in the show notes. You can also pick up the question-only conversation tool. That is 100% free. We want that in the hands of every parent of a teen athlete and performer. And we would love it if you would subscribe to this channel. See you next time, Nate.
We'll see you soon. Thanks, Coach.
On behalf of Steve Galley, I'm Nate Crandall, and we thank you, our loyal listeners, for tuning in to this episode. If you love what you're learning from the Stop Parenting and Start Coaching podcast, we would appreciate it very much if you would leave us a 5-star review and some glowing comments. We also encourage you to share this episode with your friends and family who are parents of athletes and performers. And if you want to explore further and see what Steve and I are creating to help thousands of parents, athletes, and performers, please visit our company's website at createtransformbecome.com. That's createtransformbecome, all one word, .com. There you'll find a growing number of resources to help you elevate your performance. Thank you again for your support, and we encourage you to create a magical relationship with your athlete and performer.